look what the thing says. So, supporting working mums. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Welcome to another Well Workplaces podcast. I'm Tom Bosner, and today I'm chatting with Poppy Griffiths. Poppy, how are you?
I'm good, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, going well. We are talking about supporting working mums today, particularly with trying to, help or look at how they can lean into their careers with a bit more, confidence is really what we'll be discussing today, Poppy. Now, you're obviously a working mum and no doubt have a lot of friends that are in a similar boat, maybe through school or colleagues and others. What do you think really stops women from leaning into what they really want at work? What do you think?
Oh, that's a big question.
It's a big one. Go on in.
It is a big question. I think in this day and age, there's many working mums that absolutely really want a successful career, and they're really working hard at pursuing that. Yet, there's always this feeling, this undercurrent of family demands that really drag us, down into the weeds. And a lot of it's fabulous, but a lot of the demands can drag us back down in the weeds, if you like. And I think it impedes sometimes on our ability to really lean into what we want in other areas of our life. And, by way is that sort of pursuing a really successful career. And it's funny, actually, I know myself, I often feel that it's myself, right, to blame in some ways for some of the imbalances that I know I feel in work and life. I do want a successful career, but yet I do feel this undercurrent of home demands. And I think for a lot of working women, they would say that, yeah, these things do probably sound familiar. And, I ask myself often, what are these? Like, what is it that's really, like, I think holding me back by way of the demands that drag me down from a family perspective? And I think women do tend to have overly high standards. So, insisting that things at home have to be perfect and just right and, just as we like it. And I think it's almost sometimes too, I think, a bit of a skewed sense of loyalty that we hold ourselves back and to such high standards at home, not because we want to be perfect, but because we almost feel like we're not good enough in the roles that we're playing at work and home. So it's almost like we're overcompensating to really try and make up for our perceived shortcomings for, throwing ourselves into our career. So, therefore we must not be perfect at home. And I think some of the most senior, like reports will tell you that some of the most senior executive women suffer from this skewed sense of loyalty the most. And they really turn to become quite introspected and self-examining in really a continuous loop of self-criticism, because, they are pursuing their careers and feeling like, oh gosh, I should be trying to do more at home and prove that I'm also a devoted mother and wife as well. So yeah, I definitely think that skewed sense of loyalty can play in. And I think too, we do have, I know myself, a bit of a reluctance sometimes to delegate. So humans on a whole are not good at recognizing in themselves that they're bad delegators. We see it in others, but funnily enough, we're not good at seeing it in ourselves. And women inherently believe more strongly that they can do it all. And that will show up in any stats you read around multitasking. Women can multitask left, right, and centre. But funnily enough, for men and women, when we are multitasking, our effectiveness really declines. I've read stuff where it declines by up to 40%. So really, when we don't delegate, we're actually proving to be less effective for ourselves. And boundaries would be the other thing. So I do think women, we take on a larger caregiving role in society, and we're also proud to be hardworking and connected to those at work, but also those in our communities and at home. But when we do take on everything all the time ourselves, it's actually leaving very little time for ourselves. And it also, if you're wanting to pursue a career, a successful career, having that lack of boundaries actually sometimes jeopardizes our success in our career. So being aware, I think more aware of boundaries is really important. And I think too, waiting, when it comes to, waiting for when it's the best time, waiting for when I'm ready to, jump into this. We insist we have to be 100% ready on everything to take that leap of faith or believe that we've earned the right to throw our hat into the ring and go for that next opportunity at work. So, yes, we need to stop waiting and just jump in.
Just jump in. Yeah. I think of the women in my life and just I'm always amazed at how much they firstly get done in their lives, whether that be at work or at home, and in the community as well. I've got some great role models in my mum and obviously my wife as well. And it's just like I'm just thinking, how the hell do you keep up with all of this plus work at the rate that they do? And when you were talking, then I was just thinking, gee, there's just a lot of things that working women have to consider, and the mum guilt thing. Obviously, I've heard in our business, I've heard mums say that. So you're describing that kind of in a more intelligent way, I guess. There,
sort of. But you're right. It is a lot of it is mum guilt, right? Like it's guilty that it's guilty that we should be doing all of this and therefore we don't delegate. It's guilt that we're pursuing our career, but what about our family? So we sort of come back to this sort of having this skewed sense of loyalty, and I think always often holding overly high standards on ourselves and not getting help and being open to asking for help. So yes, we can do a lot. Yes, we're often quite effective, but I think we need to also stop and ask ourselves, well, if we do really want to succeed at, work, or if we really do want to succeed at home, whatever that success looks like for you, just think about, like, are you actually doing things that are setting yourself up for success? Are you allowing yourself to lean in to confidently doing what you want without the guilt?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I give you a quick example of mum guilt that was with my wife this morning? I just think it's funny because it was this morning. So last day of prep today, walking with my daughter, and my daughter noticed that some mums and others were going to the assembly, but my wife was going to work. And so my daughter was like, I want you to stay because all the other parents are here. And there wasn't like all the other parents. There was like 5 or something. And then my wife came home and she's like, oh my God, I feel so bad and so guilty. But anyway, I thought that was just a funny, or not a funny one for my daughter Willow, but it was just an interesting one of how that kind of loops around to result in mum guilt. Meanwhile, my wife had to run to a meeting somewhere semi-important. So yeah, it's just a funny live example on a Friday. And that would happen most weeks for everyone, right? Yeah.
Our kids absolutely setting us up to feel that guilt as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. So given that, what you've described there is, I guess there's a number of barriers for women to sort of that they need to work through to help them lean into their careers. What are some things to consider, or what are your sort of hot takes there?
Yeah, so I think, look, it's really about some of these things. It's like the barriers, right, that we've put up for ourselves, the things that are holding us back. I think when we want to get ahead at work, it's important that we're thinking about our time management. I think that's a very important one for a busy working mum. Time is just the essence of everything. And time, this starts at home, and really thinking about, as we've talked about earlier, changing that division of labour at home. And that can be different for everyone, for every couple, for every family, single parents. It's obviously even harder again. But I think each of us has to ask ourselves, what does our time management look like? Can we give ourselves permission to do what we want to do and not feel guilty? Can we put ourselves, I almost say, like, if we do actually put ourselves last, right, no one wins. It's the same thing. If you're not at your best and if you're not healthy and happy, then the others around you are not healthy and happy. So I think it's really important that we do give ourselves permission to do what we want to do in the first instance. I think coming back to that division of labour, what can we do to negotiate for more fair at home? And it may not be even, but just fair, like what is actually going to be possible and, work for you, and how can you actually potentially be better thinking about, task distribution, so to speak, in a home session, who can do what. And especially, obviously, having those conversations with your partners and with your kids, especially if you're a single parent, obviously having those discussions with your kids as they get older is so important, we can all put in at home. And I think community.
Is this where people just end up with a cleaner if they can?
Do buying time, Tom, is actually not, it's obviously if you're in a position to be able to afford it, but where we can buy time, it often can really help. And buying time doesn't necessarily always mean having to have a financial outlay. Like buying time could be reciprocal with friends. What can you do to help others? And we know when we help, obviously help is so reciprocal, like it tends to come back in tenfold. So, as working parents, what can we do for others to also allow us more time? And I mean, we do this school community myself all the time. We have a child coming home today. And I know other families at the drop of a hat would do the same for me when I get caught with work. So, I think regardless of what help looks like, don't feel guilty. Like, don't feel guilty to ask. If you can afford it, don't feel guilty to hire in some support and help. Don't feel guilty to be involved in the community and then have the community involved in helping you. I think as women, we have this guilt that we can't ask for help, and that we don't delegate, and we take it all on, and we, get too overwhelmed. So I think basically in a nutshell, when we can relieve ourselves, I think, from some of the household pressures and the family pressures, we ourselves are more resilient, we can be more focused, we can be more confident, and really more intentional about our goals. And those goals can be at home in family life, but importantly, they can also be in our careers as well.
I think, that's awesome. And I think as well, it's kind of like if you can buy in help, and as you put it, it's not necessarily always a financial outlay. But if you can get that, what do you like? The benefit is obviously energy. I always talk about energy, like, you've only got X amount of energy. So if you can conserve a little bit of that, to then expend on things that you like, obviously that's beneficial for you, and at work as well, you have a little bit more energy there. But then if you get to complete something, and you get a bit more satisfaction because you're not multitasking as well.
And it's beneficial for family as well. I mean, when we have good energy, right, and where we're focusing our energy on the things that we're passionate about and that we're making great contributions. And I know we talked about this last week by way of time and energy. We are better parents to our kids as well. So buying in help, asking for help, whatever that looks like, it works in everyone's favors. And I think the most important thing too is that we forget people like being asked to give a helping hand. Think about when you've been asked for help, a majority of people will be first ones to put up their hand and want to help. Like, as humans, it's innate that we want to do that. So we want to do it, but we forget ourselves that it's okay to ask.
I've had some, I guess, changing topics a little bit here, but I've had some really interesting. We're hiring a little bit at the moment in our business, and been interviewing a few people, and it's been awesome to chat with lots of great candidates. And most of those are working parents or working mums, especially. And it's been really nice to hear them, I guess, present themselves in a way that's like, these are my priorities in my family. Obviously, talking about how the family is a priority, and kind of working out what the role is and how flexible it is and that kind of thing. And it's been nice for that to come out naturally in conversation. In saying that, though, I feel that sometimes working mums can kind of present, or it looks like they're presenting with that sense, that feeling of, like, I guess, imposter syndrome, like they shouldn't kind of be there, or in some ways.
It's almost like they shouldn't be there because they're asking for those priorities.
Yeah.
responsibility that therefore they don't deserve to be
exactly. And I'm like, oh, and I'm just like, yeah, of course it's flexible. Of course your family's a priority. So it was kind of a nice conversation, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, don't, the imposter syndrome thing, like for women, I'm assuming that fits into the whole for working mums. Is that just, did I just make that up, or is that factual?
No, I think that's very factual. I mean, anything you read will say women naturally have these higher feelings of imposter syndrome than men do. And I think mothers particularly innately carry and feel so responsible and want to do this parenting job so very well, as they say, perfectly, even outside of a job sense, like the family sense. Imposter syndrome can actually get us as well as mums, where we think that we should be doing everything perfectly as a mum. And, we've got this doubt that we're not good enough and we're not doing a good enough job. And I think, yes, absolutely, that then translates into a work setting as well. And I think just explaining so people know, like in terms of the imposter phenomenon, it's so people know it's that feeling of I can't be good enough, I'm not good enough, even though I do all these things in my job or I do all of these things for my child and my family, I feel like somehow I'm failing. And that really is what's at the bottom or the heart of imposter syndrome. And I think as working parents, you're right, and as working mums, it can supercharge. It can be even more supercharged. I was looking actually at a study at the start of the pandemic that KPMG conducted on imposter syndrome, and they surveyed 750 professional women in early to middle career, so not from senior exec level, from top companies and brands, about their experiences with imposter syndrome and how they've successfully overcome it. And interestingly, across all of the results, the top 3 cited causes of imposter feeling for women were family expectations, gender roles, and societal stereotypes. So we think about who imposter syndrome is going to come and chase. Working mums, with family expectations, gender roles, and societal stereotypes, I mean, yeah, it absolutely comes for working mums, and we are definitely at risk.
Yeah, it's a recipe for the imposter monster. Those 3 things, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, given that, and you're a working mum as well, what do you think is important for working women to consider to help overcome it? Is there anything through that study that came out as like the key tips or your tips in particular?
Yeah, I think, look, my tips on this is the first step really is to understand what you're feeling and why. Like we actually have to sort of disassociate ourselves with the feeling and stop and say, like, what is it? Why am I feeling this? And why? So, once you've identified what that sort of confidence culprit is, you're able to better start dealing with it. Is it that you doubt your technical ability in a work sense? Is it that you fear being successful in your job? Is it that you're terrified to fail or feel that you could never, ever possibly win that promotion? Or in your example, Tom, like, feel like you're deserving for a job. And I think so identifying that confidence culprit is really, really important. Women do put higher pressure on themselves not to fail than men. Absolutely, they do. And there is also, women have higher self-doubt and fear of success. And that fear of success almost is like self-sabotaging in itself. So I think identifying and labeling what is actually causing this feeling is the absolute first thing. We can't do anything about it until we actually label it.
And I imagine there, Poppy, to be quite specific as well is important, because if I was to do that exercise, and I was in a rush, I'd be like, oh yeah, you do something, you write something down that's pretty vague, but if you can get really specific on what you're really feeling, you can actually do something with it, I guess, right?
Yes. And I think too, you can start to notice whether every time you're feeling this, is it actually coming back to the same root cause the whole time? And a lot of the time it is, but we don't consciously take the time to do that. I think, also to talking to others, and building up other women is so important, because it's important that we as women have a network of working colleagues and working mums and just a network, really, to be able to share our experiences, to be able to share when people have done a great job, and to be able to tell them so. It's amazing, actually, like as a community, we're there to exist for one another, right? And a praise can go a long way to really break down any self-doubt and confidence. So, if you feel it yourself, certainly in a work setting, think about what you can do by way of supporting and giving recognition and bolstering the success for other women, because that absolutely will help break it down. I think too, there's a lot talking about communication and language around imposter syndrome. So, not being assertive enough. So, we tend to have this, inclination to say, I feel that this may be the way forwards, rather than being really confident in our decisions. And, I think this is the way forward. So even actually just thinking about how you talk and how you use language in itself can actually be a really great way to start to sort of boost your confidence by being more assertive. And the last thing,
sorry, it's also on that one. It's kind of how people apologize at the, they say, "Oh, sorry, does that make sense?" So after saying a statement, for example, so it's trying to knock all that out of the lingo, eh?
Yeah, and I think that's the self-doubt, right, that often creeps in. It's almost this self-doubt of like, I feel this may be the way, rather than, I think this is the way forward, being, confident. So that's really important. And I think too, interestingly, the KPMG study did say that the number one factor really for women to beat imposter syndrome is to have a supportive manager, or to have a mentor, or, somebody trusted, certainly in a work setting. And that is so important. So to be able to actually have, women that you look up to as mentors, and also to think of yourself as a mentor, like back to being able to share your own experiences. Everybody has talents and, wonderful attributes and experiences to be able to share with others, in a work or in a family setting. So, take the time and give yourself the credit to be a mentor as well to others, and to support other women.
Yeah, I love it. And I love it at work, in a work setting, when you see someone connecting with a slightly older person, getting the perspective and wisdom from them, and then also connecting with some younger people, even if it's 5 years, because there's actually a lot that can change in 5 years of life in terms of what your priorities are. But in a work setting as well, for women, that's obviously for some women, that's through the parenting years as well, no doubt. So Poppy, thanks so much.
Sorry. Yes, I was just going to say, it's really important. You've raised a good point around looking to other women, certainly that are at different life stages, because I think often, looking forwards to where there may be women in your organisation that are a few years ahead of you having kids, that sometimes can be just as reassuring and confidence boosting, and helping to be able to have good relationships and get good advice from them, as well as obviously reaching out to working parents that are at a similar stage to you. So yeah, really think about how you can sort of, I guess, diversify your support network.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was, thanks so much for your time. You're actually probably have some parenting style commitments right now, as do I. We had a bit of a time frame to work through today. So thanks so much, Poppy. Have a great afternoon with your lovely children. Take care.
And you too, Tom. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Poppy. See ya.